Hello everybody, it's March 21st, 2013, and I thought I'd start this one off with, since this is War and Rumors of War Part 2, a little quote that I heard the other day that I really liked, and it's this: resistance to tyrants is obedience to God. I like that. If nothing else, resistance to tyrants is at least some guarantee you're going to have some liberty. So it has, a very philosophical point of view, if not a spiritual one. Okay, well, because of the name of the video here, let's talk about what's going on. I guess the easiest thing to say is, where is war not happening? And war can be defined in a number of ways. It can be economic, we're seeing that. It can be a hot war like what we've got going on in Syria and Africa and Iraq and Afghanistan. So there are different levels and intensities. Low intensity, high intensity, guerrilla warfare, cyber warfare. It just seems like nobody can get along these days. Interesting. Okay, I thought I'd bring up a couple of things that are kind of important, and I'm going to be low-key today, okay? I'm not going to lose it, and I apologize when I do that, whether I get too impassioned or, I get emotional. Either way. Seen a lot in my day. Okay, we've got this surveillance grid that's almost complete. Not just in the skies and the satellites, but in your home. And some of you who don't know about that should find out about it. We've got the smart grid, surveillance technology, social media, your refrigerator, your dishwasher. Remember I told you the CIA director at the time, Petraeus, my old boss, revealed that they're going to be able to do that. Cameras on the streets, you're going to have a black box in your car, GPS monitoring, taxes on every mile you drive. This is all part of the surveillance police state and the imposition of Agenda 21, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. You don't usually hear Agenda 21 in your local communities or in your states or even at the federal government level. It's usually called something else, something to do with sustainability. They take a really good word, and use that to try to win you over. But when you look at the whole program, it's really not very good at all. Okay, just so that you know, on all this technology, the elites control it. It's their money. They do it for themselves. They don't do it for you. You get kind of like okay, well, we're done with this, or we don't really need this. Let's throw this out to the public and make some money off of it. The elites, the governments, are 30 to 50 years ahead of anything that you know about, okay? And they use it against you, not just for their own benefit, and right in their little circles. They use it as an offensive weapon against you. Your smartphone is a good example of that, for tracking you, okay? Just as an example. But this is dangerous because it's a scientific technocracy. Einstein, back, when all these wars and things were going on at the beginning of the 20th century, he said that he really thought governments should be controlled by scientists. And I kind of scoffed at that, and it turns out I was right. People that even have scientific bents, talents, you give them a little authority, a little power, and it goes to their head. It doesn't matter. All men are the same, it seems like. And it's sad, but that's just the way it is. So don't believe that technology is going to save you. Okay, the Obama visit to the Mideast. I made that statement yesterday that I think something big is in the works for various reasons. It doesn't necessarily have to be that Obama reveals himself as something other than what he is. It could be just a major event of some sort. Certainly the cyber attacks that have been going on in the banks across the world are an indication of something that's pretty major. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute too. But I still don't think it's on the level that I'm expecting from this visit of his in the Mideast. So either he'll be something or say that he's something that he really isn't, or maybe he is, or it'll be a major event there or somewhere else in the world that's going to make a pretty big impact. That would be my guess. All right, the economic war. I mentioned that at the beginning of the video. Let's talk about Cyprus for a minute. You know, the people rose up and said, no, we don't want this, and so the EU Parliament backed down. But remember I said the banksters don't give up that easy? And they didn't. You probably know by now that the EU is at a melting point, and the EU threatened Cyprus that they might not let their banks open at all, or in fact take all the money in the banks now, and that the people won't have any of it. I heard one commentator yesterday say, you know, a 10% haircut, it's a terrible term because it's actually a theft, but a 10% is really not that bad considering what we in the United States are facing. We're facing a total devaluation of our currency and runaway inflation, which is actually going to be worse than the 10%. This is a market guy from Wall Street who really knows what he's talking about. And I mentioned him before. You might want to go on his website. It's a YouTube site. I mentioned him before. C Green, CGREENE 34. And he just put up a video that I thought was very good. The title of it's a little, well, it gets you, and I'm sure that's the reason why he uses it. But he's not a religious fanatic. He's a young man, very intelligent, brilliant, I would say. And of course, having worked on Wall Street, he understands financial markets and the financial system very well, excellently. Went to the best schools back in the East. So go look at his site on YouTube. Again, it's all lowercase, CGREENE 34. And the one that he put up was Antichrist Will Start World War III. Actually, all his work has been exceptional. His sidekick, Topher Morrison, he's very good. I really like him as well. But Topher looks like he has vampire teeth, and a person made that comment on that YouTube site the other day. I don't know if they really are or not, but I still like Topher. I think he's obviously very smart and knows what he's doing. So anyway, back on Cyprus. Like I said, the EU may keep the banks closed for a very long time, taking all the money even. Cyprus has asked Russia to help in their bailout, and the problem with the media discussing this thing with Russia is that, you know, they're trying to say, well, the reason why Russia is involved, the reason why this bailout thing should happen anyways, because Russian assets are there, you know, private investors from Russia, businesses, civilians, and so they're bad. And the problem I have with that, especially with the American media, is that, well, what about HSBC? What about Wachovia? What about the $450 billion they laundered and got slapped on the wrist for? They didn't even get seriously, you know, prosecuted or sued for it. You know, you have the whole thing with, you know, the situation with Goldman Sachs and all of that, and yet what do we see? We see them trying to say that the Russians are bad guys, and that it's too bad, but Cyprus shouldn't have, you know, let them in there. It's kind of the innuendo that they're saying. There are Americans there too, you know. They're British, they're Germans. Cyprus is a retirement community for a lot of nationalities, so it'll actually hit a lot of people across Europe, even if they don't go after any other banks in the entire European Union. A lot of people in Cyprus have close ties to the mainland. Okay, going from that, let's talk about that the folks in Cyprus now are at a place where they can't get any cash at all. Remember I said any bank only has about 2% of its digitized money in cash or currency. They're able to get very little out of the banks there in Cyprus right now. Think about what would happen if that happened here. And it actually did. And we're going to talk a little bit about that too. Chase the other day, about 1 million customers in JP Morgan Chase went to the bank and their account showed zero. Think about that. We're going to talk about that in a little minute here too, because that's really important. Okay, a lot of people in Europe and around the world are blaming the Germans for this problem in Cyprus. And they're not really it. People got to remember, they're pointing fingers at peoples. They ought to be pointing fingers at the banksters. They're the ones that have done all this. From the United States starting this whole thing in 2005, 2006, maybe even earlier, in the whole mortgage derivative thing. The German people were basically tapped to finance the bailouts. And of course they can't handle it. But it's not the German people, okay? I don't know about Merkel. She might be a problem. But the banks are the problem. Let's stop pointing the fingers at people, this divide and conquer thing that the banks do so well, and who they work for. Let's remember the people in this are all in this together. We need to kick them off. Now, there's an EU parliamentarian by the name of Nigel Farage. I think is how you say his name. He's from Britain. And he's telling people right now that everyone should get their money out of the banks. Don't wait. It'll do that. It'll do two things. First of all, it'll save a little cash for you, what there is left. The second thing is that it's kind of like an offensive against the banks, kind of forcing them. Take that currency away from them, and anything else you can get out of them at this point is kind of like a reverse, warfare. Because he says that they're going to raid all the banks across Europe and anybody who has signed on to the derivatives. And again, that brings us back to the United States. Okay, we're going to see this eventually. And I made the point yesterday. Russian Vladimir Putin condemned what was going on in Cyprus. You didn't hear a word from Obama. Silence is agreement. Okay? The way they're going to loot you here in the U.S. from these financial experts that I've been able to talk to, although this Chase thing the other day was interesting, they'll basically do it here through inflation and devaluation. And I kind of explained that the other day with the cost of gold. The cost of goods and services will go up, your income will go down, and the amount of real value of your currency will go down. That's how they get us here. But they could raid the banks as well. Okay, so let's run to North Korea here for a minute because, that's still happening. North Korea is making new threats, and, these guys are almost like you get tired of hearing them, If you're going to throw the punch, sorry. But, they've always been like this. So I can understand people not putting a whole lot of stock in what they're doing. But there's another side to this, okay? There were banks in South Korea and communications facilities that got hacked. And they immediately blamed it on the North Koreans. During that same period, the Chase Bank problem happened where the accounts went to zero, about 1 million of them. And there were some other banks, I understand, around the world that suffered the same thing. Now, I've talked to some other professionals about this, and this is what they said. And I'm going to read this because I think it's kind of important. The consensus with professionals suggests that North Korea does not have the technology to hack South Korean computers, much less any others. This is coming from somewhere else. A false flag attack blamed on North Korea. Remember I said they could blame things on North Korea? They might be doing beta tests on what you'll do when you find out that your money's not available anymore. And who's they? Do you need to guess about that? The banks, of course, in collusion with some other maybe government or entity that has this ability, be it China. I don't think it would be Russia. China, I wouldn't put it past them. Again, that Chinese general at the Pentagon the other day, I don't know. All right, like I said, other banks are experiencing the problem. The Chase account holders had their accounts show zero. And Chase said it was a computer glitch, a software glitch. Now, the professionals I have talked to said that's not true. That if there was a computer glitch, you would not be able to access your account. It's not going to show the balance at zero. So they're saying that they think that there really was a breach of security and a theft, that the money may have actually been used for a short period of time and then put back. I don't know. But the point is that you're depending upon the banks to keep you liquid, right? And maybe Nigel Farage is right. Maybe you should get your cash out of there. If you have investments, whatever, if you're waiting to put the money someplace, maybe you should just do it now. Again, I'm not a financial advisor, but these banks will steal from you. Look what they're doing in EU. Look what MF Global did, and all these other banks. So you need to protect yourselves. Okay, so we're pretty much done here. I thought I'd bring up that the Feinstein bill looks like it's dead at this point, but this is all smoke and mirrors. The registration requirements, the fact that you can't give your weapon, your hunting rifle, to your heir, to your child, all those things are going to be in there. They're going to get us on this thing. We got to keep fighting it, and we got to keep writing our senators, although, like I said, usually it doesn't do any good, but at least you have to make every effort to stop this thing at this level, because this is a dangerous situation. As I've said, the Second Amendment is the linchpin for all the rest of your rights. Government doesn't give you your rights. It recognizes them. I heard one senator say, well, no right is absolute. Well, that's a whitewash, okay? You don't determine whether you went too far on a right until after you have done it. In other words, like yelling fire in a theater, you have the right to say it, right? But if you did it, then you're going to have to pay the consequences afterwards if there really wasn't a fire. That's the difference. You are held personally reliable, not everybody else who has free speech. Same thing with a gun. Somebody shoots somebody with a gun, they're responsible, not everybody that owns a gun. Okay, we're really getting away from the right viewpoint on what rights are. And that's all by design. You heard Lindsey Graham, at least you should have, in one situation where he said, when they yell for their lawyer, just tell them tough luck. They want to take away your right to an attorney. They want to throw you in a military prison without trial by jury or by being confronted with the evidence against you, because they don't want the evidence against them. They're criminals. McCain and Lindsey Graham want this war with Iran. We have bad people up there. They've been bought off. Absolutely. Again, on this situation with the gun ban, Holder said that they would be using a brainwashing campaign. He said this back in the 90s when he was an assistant attorney general or a deputy attorney general or something. We have all these ridiculous things happening in schools right now. They're suspending or expelling kids for having squirt guns and bubble guns and fashioning guns out of pastries, drawing guns or whatever. It goes to an extreme, and I think this is part of the Holder plan to make this thing, anathema. And this isn't good. Not that, they can go home and they can watch, these killing games, as I've talked about, these mass killing games. And that's bad, but in the schools, they don't want to have any association there that might refer to the Second Amendment. No, pointing a weapon at a person or pretending to even isn't good, but squirt guns? Come on. Bubble guns? It's going way, way too far, but this is all part of basically a mind control campaign, and Holder said he was going to do it, and they are. Okay, I wanted to end up on this last thing here on the situation with Agenda 21. What's bad about Agenda 21? It takes away your rights to use your property as you see fit. It taxes you by mileage on your car. It does a lot of bad things as far as trying to keep you from being independent. The whole purpose of Agenda 21 is to shut down the rural areas, even your own private little gardens in the suburban areas, put you in mega cities so they can control you using the surveillance technology that they have. okay? Cashless society, all these things that put you under total control. And then, when the time is right for them, kill you. Okay, I'm just going to tell you. That's what it is. So, if you hear anything like Partnership for Sustainable Communities or anything like that, using really nice terms for a wicked, wicked agenda, Agenda 21, look into those things. Don't just buy into these supposed plans, okay? Make sure you know what they are. The whole point of them is to push collectivism to the point of really communism, and it's not going to be good for us. It takes away your individuality. We don't want that. Okay, governments can no longer protect you from these international corporations. The international corporations are the government. Remember I told you that we've turned into a fascist dictatorship? So, really, all we can look forward to is the destruction of Babylon. Because Babylon is a mercantile, a merchant-based society. It's obviously evil. It's about profit, not about people. And if you believe the Bible, that's got to go away if human beings are going to survive. Because right now, the only thing that matters to corporations is that they survive and that they rape you. Governments used to be there to protect us against this type of thing, but now the governments are the corporations. It's one and the same. All right, so we do have a very, very bad situation in this regard. And, I always end usually on some type of a spiritual note, and this is the one I'd like to end with today. It's not really like it was on the one yesterday where I was talking about something nice. This is a warning. And the warning is this: we are not fighting against mere flesh and blood. We are not trying to stand against mere flesh and blood. We are confronted with a demonic, spiritual-based enemy. When I mean spiritual, I mean it's a consciousness of evil that creates and loves evil and lies and death and destruction. And something similar is said in the New Testament, but if you look at it today, it really is true. And I keep going back to this enmity thing between the seed of Lucifer, the serpent, and the seed of the woman. It's to show, I'm just getting right down to it here, folks. There is a division in what we think is mankind. There are two different species here, okay? There's one from the serpent, the devil, however you want to say it. And then there's the one from the woman. All right? And you might say, well, what's the difference? One's mankind, the other isn't. They have usurped control. Am I talking about, shape-shifting reptile, creatures? No. I'm talking about the fruits. Okay, what seeds are in your heart? Okay, and everybody has a little bit of both. Okay, it's what you succumb to that shows who you are, who your real father is. And that's what it comes down to. Everybody knows who their mother is usually. I mean, that's of course, orphans and things like that, if they've lost both parents or, that kind of thing. Adoptions. But the basic principle is everybody knows who their mother is. You don't always know who your father is. And that is what defines you. The fruits of what you do. What's in your heart. What manages you primarily on a day-to-day basis. Little mistakes, okay. Little errors, okay. But what is your motivating principle? Greed, power, death? Or is it sustaining those that you love? And there I go using that term. That's why I say they'll use a nice term to hide an evil thing in this Agenda 21, going back to that. But the point is, do we love? Do we create? Do we value each other? Or do we use deceit, greed, destruction for our own gain? All right? That's what the definition is. That's how you know who you're dealing with. Okay. Enough for today. this is probably kind of anticlimactic to what I normally present, but I wanted to purposely keep a little low key today. Watch what's going on in the world right now. This visit to the Middle East is very important. What's going on with the banks, and the economic warfare, the hot wars. Get ready. And I always say prepare, okay? Food, water, barterable items that you don't need money for, those types of things, okay?